Republican strategist Lisa Booth, who is here in New York. Here he is. Let's go to Ted Cruz.
Thrilled to be here at a small business. We just had a tremendous meeting with pastors here in the Bronx, with Hispanic pastors, with African American pastors. And I'm so encouraged after what was a terrific victory yesterday in Wisconsin. It was a turning point, I believe, in this entire election. It culminated 4 states in a row in the last 2 weeks where we have beaten Donald Trump over and over and over again. And you know, just 3 weeks ago in Wisconsin, we were behind by 10 points. The media was saying we couldn't win Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a perfect state, we were told, for Donald Trump to win. And if you look at the election results last night, we won across the state. We won women, we won men, we won young people. We won every income group. What we saw is Republicans come together and unite, stand united, and that's really what this election is all about. It is about unity. If we come together, we're going to win. If we remain divided, we will not, and I could not be more encouraged. And for the first question, I'll turn to the birthday girl.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Donald Trump last night, reacting to the results in Wisconsin, he called you a Trojan horse being used by the party bosses attempting to steal the nomination. What's your answer?
Well, you know, Donald can always be counted on to take the high road and to demonstrate class. If he wants to engage in insults, he's welcome to do so. He gets very angry when the voters reject him. He has now lost in 4 states in a row. He lost a landslide election in Utah. He lost all 6 delegates that were elected in Colorado. He lost badly in North Dakota, and yesterday in Wisconsin, a state that he bragged the day before. The day before yesterday, Donald Trump promised a, quote, big victory in Wisconsin. And not only did he not get a big victory, but the men and women of Wisconsin resoundingly rejected his campaign, and the reason is simple. Donald has no solutions to the problems we're facing. He likes to yell and scream and insult and curse, and his statement last night was consistent with that. But he has no real solutions to bringing jobs back to America. My top priority as president will be bringing jobs back to America, expanding economic opportunity, raising wages for people who are struggling, people in small businesses. You know, today, for the first time since they've been keeping track of the data, more small businesses go out of business than are formed. 2/3 of all new jobs come from small businesses. You know, when my dad came from Cuba in 1957, he was just 18 years old. He was penniless, had $100 in his underwear, and he got a job at a place not too different from this restaurant here. Washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. Now, why did he wash dishes? He couldn't speak English. And you didn't have to speak English to take a dish, put it under hot water, and scrub it. It's people like my dad, it's the teenage immigrants, it's people who are struggling, who have been hurt so badly in the Obama-Clinton economy. Those are the people I'm fighting for. And the reason Donald lost so resoundingly in Wisconsin is he has no solutions, no answers for bringing jobs back, for raising wages, and we are running a campaign based on a positive, optimistic, forward-looking conservative agenda to bring jobs and opportunity back to America.
Senator, you are dead last here in New York. Senator.
Usted está aquí en terreno hispano, con pastores latinos. ¿Cuál sería el mensaje para nuestra gente que va a estar viendo en Univisión? Quieren saber cuál es el mensaje, sobre todo porque la gran mayoría piensa que usted está en contra de ellos o que tendría posturas que les van a hacer daño.
Look, our community, the Hispanic community, is a... Entiendo casi todo en español, pero no puedo hablar como yo quería. I have the problem of the second-generation immigrant. I learned Spanish the same time I did English. I mean, when I was a little kid, mis abuelos, ellos no hablan inglés. But to be honest, what I really spoke at home was Spanglish. And you know, as you know, in our community, that's true with just about everyone, and certainly with their kids. So no, I heard the question. So I understood the question, and I will say, listen, in the Hispanic community, we have shared values in our community. The values that resonate in our community are faith, family, patriotism. You know, a lot of people don't know the rate of military enlistment among Hispanics is higher than any demographic in this country. And I think the most powerful value in the Hispanic community is the American dream. We're a community who we're filled with optimism. When my dad came to America from Cuba, when he couldn't speak English and was washing dishes, he was filled with hopes and dreams for the future, for his kids, for his grandkids. And my message to the Hispanic community is the very same as my message is to every community, which is we can get back to that economic opportunity that America has enjoyed for centuries. We can get back to the nation that we've been, where anybody can start with nothing and achieve anything. You know, the Hispanic community has been hurt, and has been hurt horribly by the failed Obama economy. Now, I recognize that many in the press, they try to convey any Republican as somehow mean and nasty, and they try to portray any Democrat as a champion of the Hispanic community. Seems to me people ought to ask then, why is it that under Barack Obama the rich have gotten richer? The top 1% in this country earn a greater share of our income than any year since 1928. Those with money and power have gotten fat and happy under the Obama administration. I'll tell you something that I say often, which is an unusual thing to hear a Republican say. I agree with Bernie Sanders. In Wisconsin, just the other day, I visited with a young lady who was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I told her, I said, listen, I actually agree with Bernie. When Bernie says the fix is in, that Washington is corrupt, that career politicians in both parties get in bed with the lobbyist and special interest and help the rich and powerful, I agree with that. But the question I asked her is, as I said, listen, where I disagree with Bernie is on a solution. If the problem is that Washington is corrupt, that government is corrupt, why would you want more government? Why would you want to expand government's power? What I want to do is take the power out of Washington and back to the people. And so my message to the Hispanic community is we can have greater opportunity. We can have more jobs. We can have higher wages by taking the burdens of government off of small businesses. And I'll give you one other message that I think is critically important in the Hispanic community, and that is school choice. I think school choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. Sadly, the modern Democratic Party, because they are in hock to the union bosses and the teachers' unions, they fight against school choice at every turn. And yet in the Hispanic community and the African American community, there are generations of kids that are trapped. Education is the gateway to the American dream, and I believe that every child in America has a right to have access to a quality education, has a right to learn and to develop, and education is how you achieve the American dream. And as president, I will be the first president we have ever had who fights for school choice for every child, regardless of race, ethnicity, or wealth or zip code, that every child has a right to a quality education.
Last question.
Your polling shows that you are dead last here in New York. 2.5 months ago, you railed against New York values. How do you expect to do well in this state, or to win, if that's your goal?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about polling is it can change, and it can change quickly. 3 weeks ago in Wisconsin, we were 10 points down. We just won a landslide victory, winning by 13 points, sweeping the state. Here in the state of New York, you know, when I talked about New York values, it was interesting. Just a minute ago, I was meeting with a significant number of Hispanic pastors, of African American pastors here in the Bronx. And one of those pastors, Senator Ruben Diaz, who was a Democratic state senator who hosted the gathering, Senator Diaz said, I know exactly what you mean by New York values. We fight them every day in our community. We fight them. They're the values that led, for example, Mayor Bill de Blasio. Liberal Democrat, upon getting elected mayor, one of the first things he did was to try to shut down charter schools in Harlem, because he is captive to the union bosses who control him. So one of his first actions was to try to throw young African American and Hispanic kids out of the schools that were giving them hope and giving them a lifeline. Those are the values. It's the values of the liberal Democratic politicians that have been hammering the people of New York for a long time.
So
that they've been suffering.
Values? Why call them New York values?
Well,
when you're in New York campaigning.
Let's be clear. The people of New York know exactly what those values are. They're the values of liberal Democratic politicians, like Andrew Cuomo, like Anthony Weiner, like Eliot Spitzer, like Charlie Rangel, all of whom Donald Trump has supported, given tens of thousands of dollars throughout the years. If you want to know what liberal Democratic values are, follow Donald Trump's checkbook. He has been funding these policies. Look, for people in Western New York, who would like to have jobs. Western New York, you've got the Marcellus Shale. You've got tremendous natural resources. In Pennsylvania, we're seeing jobs, we're seeing economic opportunity because Pennsylvania, they're developing those resources. Liberal Democratic politicians won't allow New Yorkers to develop those resources. Apparently, they don't think New Yorkers want jobs. And Donald Trump has been funding those liberal Democratic politicians. And let me give you one more example of the values of the liberal Democrats that have been so hurting New York. The actions of people like Mayor Bill de Blasio, who in every time there is a confrontation between criminals and police officers, the liberal Democrats side with the criminals and the looters and the rioters rather than the police officers. I'll tell you, the moment when the brave men and women in blue of the NYPD stood up and turned their backs on Mayor Bill de Blasio, I cheered for those New York cops, and I'll tell you, people all across America did. That spoke to the entire country that when you have politicians that will not stand with police officers and firefighters and first responders, and for that matter, soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, that's an example of how these liberal politicians have forgotten who we are. I'll tell you, as president, I will always stand with the police officers and the firefighters and the first responders and everyone who risks their lives to keep us safe. And those values are American values. They are the values of the people of New York who are frustrated with liberal Democratic politicians who keep hammering the people of this great state.
Thanks,
guys.
All right, Senator Ted Cruz in the Bronx at this hour answering just a couple of reporter questions. Let me just cut through all of that. I think the most significant out of the gate from our correspondent, Sunlands Rafati, who was essentially asking him, and we heard Senator Cruz for the first time publicly, responding to Donald Trump's response. It was a statement last night from his loss, essentially accusing the Cruz campaign of being not just a puppet, but a Trojan horse, stealing the nomination, perhaps planting the seeds of something we could start hearing from the Trump team. And so essentially Ted Cruz said, Trump is yelling and insulting and trying to curse his way, but he really offers no specific solution. So with that, let me bring in my panel, the Nation's John Nichols, Republican strategist Lisa Booth, and CNN political commentator Van Jones. And John, let me just begin with you. What did you make of Ted Cruz's response to Trump?
Well, look, in that overall exchange there, which is sort of a classic New York moment, taking him from Wisconsin into that much more intense media environment, you saw Cruz do some things very well. But when he gets to Trump and when he tries to attack Trump, I'm not sure how well he does it, because he has this anger at Trump, just as Trump has an anger at him. And instead of the sort of slightly, or at least somewhat inspiring guy when he's speaking in Spanish and really talking about his own history and what he'd like to do, with Trump he's getting kind of down and dirty and New York politics there. And I'm not saying that is New York politics always, but I think maybe what he thinks it is. And I don't think that's going to work for him. And so my sense is that he actually didn't handle it so well. Yeah, I don't think he handled it quite so well as he might have. I would have suggested the high road there.
Well, that hasn't been taken in a while. Let me just
that road is empty.
Marinate on that one.
That road has got it's empty, no traffic.
Yeah. Van, I'm coming to you, but Lisa.
The road not taken.
On that point, though, a lot of people have pointed out for months, though, the incredible ground game of the organization from the Cruz campaign and how they've really been smart and sort of outmaneuvered Trump. And I'm wondering, though, and I don't even know if demise is the right word, but the Trump demise, I mean, he did lose double digits in Wisconsin. Right. Do you think that's being exaggerated today?
I do. I mean, look, people have been talking about the demise of the Donald Trump campaign since he announced, right? Nobody took it seriously. If you look back last fall, there's only $1 million spent against him. And then if you look after New Hampshire, there's been over 900% increase in spending against Donald Trump. People are obviously taking him seriously now as the front runner of the campaign. And I think what we learned last night are some of the shortcomings of the Donald Trump campaign, the lack of organization. We saw the strength of the Ted Cruz campaign, his organizational structure, getting into the state, running an aggressive campaign, understanding the opinion leaders in the state, like Charlie Sykes and some of those influential people, as someone who worked in Wisconsin politics. Those influencers, even those radio hosts, play a significant role within the Republican Party and within the Republican electorate.
That's what Trump was pointing out.
We can't overstate this, because look ahead at April 19th, and you have New York. Donald Trump's been polling above 50%. And you saw with the latest poll, Kasich is in second
Throw
right
up
now.
the poll on that.
Yeah.
We have them on the poll just so you all see. First of all, massive numbers for Trump in the 50s. I
Right.
don't even know if he's been that high. Kasich in second, Cruz in third. But to Cruz's point, polls are wrong. He was polling 10 points behind in Wisconsin, and look at what he did there. Van Jones, New York, New York, New York.
Yeah.